So today I'm going to try and do a quick video review of the MacDev Cyborg RX. You may have seen some videos on my channel just of shooting this gun. I've had it for about 6 months now, I think, and I've been shooting it quite a bit, especially in those 6 months. Used it for a couple tournaments and everything. So right now I'm going to quickly go over what I think about the gun and, you know, do a quick review of it. So as you can see, this is the case it'll come in. You can see Cyborg on the front, MacDev on the back. Very nice case. It's not a super soft case, but it's not a super hard case. It'll keep it nice and protected. Zipper on the outside, and you'll see, I'll quickly take a look at the case here. You can see on the top just some nice soft foam, but underneath you can keep things like manuals. I have a whole bunch of manuals that I'm keeping in here right now. I always bring all of my manuals to the field. It's a good thing to do if you want to make sure that you can work on your guns if you have to. You can see here the inside of the case. It will come with a nice set of Allen wrenches if you get it, of course, brand new, or if the people happen to still have them if you're getting used. Of course, they do have the ball ends, so they are a nice set. This is a tool that was tossed in there by whoever I bought this from, so I'm not even entirely sure what it is, but I leave it in here. So you can see it's a two-piece barrel. This is the matchstick barrel, so it's the old barrel MacDev used to always make. It is autococker threaded, just like most high-ends nowadays. It is a nice barrel, but you do only get the one size, and it's a 689, which is pretty large for current paint. But oh well, you can see it might be a little bit dirty because I haven't washed it in a little while. I haven't cleaned it up since I played last. Anyways, so here's the gun. You can see, first off, I'm going to just say a few things about the finish of the gun. It's absolutely fantastic. This is the stock anodizing, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It's probably hard to tell in the video just because I don't have the highest end camera. It's not high def or anything, so it is a beautiful gun. If you looked in if you've seen any pictures of my gun specifically, I have a bunch of them up. Because this gun is actually for sale currently, but it is a beautiful gun. The finish is amazing. The milling is beautifully done. There's a few places that you can see a little bit of the machine work that they did, especially around the eye covers here. You can see a little bit of an outline, but I don't know. I think it almost gives the gun a little bit of character to see that. It is a beautiful gun. I'm personally a huge fan of the really subdued look. How it's basically two tubes, nothing overly extreme as far as the looks go. Pretty basic shape, and I don't know, it's pretty elegant to me. I like it. I'm going to kind of go from the bottom up on the gun and tell you what I think of all the components and everything. Like I said, the finish is beautiful. So yeah, fit and finish is awesome from this MacDev gun, and I'm pretty sure almost all of the MacDev guns are comparable. The ASA, very nice ASA. Of course, it has the macro line coming out the front, so you don't have anything on either side. With the twist on, twist off, it's a very nice ASA. Very easy to turn on and off. The only little gripe I have about it here is that this is a little bit of a slippery surface for your fingers, especially when they're covered in paint, or when you're wearing gloves that are kind of slippery or covered in paint as well. It's not quite as easy to turn on and off. This gun I usually leave aired up the entire time that I use it at the field, and that's just because this thing is a little bit frustrating sometimes to turn on and off if you wanted to, but it is a great little ASA for sure. That'll lead us to this regulator. The HPR here is a pretty basic setup. It's pretty similar to a Hyper or Sidewinder kind of design. It is originally the AKA design that the Hyper is built around, but it's a similar design, but it's not quite identical. It does have a shim stack in it, but it has a bunch of other kind of pieces in there that are there's just a few more parts in it than some of those others, but it's very easy to maintain. The only issue I have with this is I've had a couple of times where it's been difficult to unscrew some of the parts. Sometimes you might have to try and grab a strap wrench or something like that to get it apart, but once you take it apart once, you probably won't have to tighten it down so hard that you can't do it again. You'll see here I actually have the Violent trigger on here, the VP trigger. This is a Delrin trigger, and it's I have the magnet in here, and it's a great trigger, super fast and amazingly comfortable. Fully radius trigger, it's amazing. The stock trigger is it's okay. It's not the best trigger, it's not the worst. I personally wanted to try out the Violent trigger. I heard great things about it, and I gotta say I'm a fan. It's something that I would recommend for sure. If you're gonna upgrade anything on this gun, the trigger is probably what I would recommend. The board is a phenomenal board. It's actually, I've heard that it is programmed by Willett to Dow, and so it's a very similar setup to a Yakuza board. It is OLED. Hopefully you'll be able to see it turn on there. You probably won't be able to read any of the display. When it's turned on, you can see a battery meter, very useful. Shows if the eyes are on or off, whatever. It'll show what firing mode you're in. I'm in semi, and it'll show your cap. Right now it's uncapped. And then it'll show your BPS right next to it. So it's super easy interface, probably the easiest board you will ever have to program. All you have to do is hold the trigger, turn on the board. You can scroll through the modes very easily. You can just, every click you'll see a new thing that you can change in the modes or board, whatever you want to call it. Very easy to change. The only reason you'd have to read your manual if you were using this board is to maybe figure out what exactly some of the names are. Maybe you don't know exactly what ramp start is, ramp degree is, that kind of thing. You can look it up in your manual, but to actually program it, it doesn't even really need a manual. Once you get the gun in your hands, you'll figure it out. It's easy. You'll see a new kind of design in the sleeve for the RAM, as well as a bit of a different bolt. So the bolt is fully enclosed, which is a really cool idea. Keeps the bolt in an atmosphere that is going to be controlled. Of course, there will be a lot less dirt and stuff getting in if you have a covered bolt. You can see mine actually has a bit of paint and stuff on it from playing a week or so ago. So to take out the RAM and everything, you don't even need a tool of any kind. Just unscrew it, pull out the entire thing. Okay, and there you go. So this is your valve spring that falls right out, right here, and this is your valve. You can see this right here is your RAM. You just unscrew it, and the RAM pops out right there. So that's all you have to do for regular maintenance. Take this out, clean off the old lube, put on new lube, toss it back together, put the two halves together, toss in your valve, put the spring on, don't drop it, and slide it back into the gun. Okay, it takes a couple turns here, make sure it's all the way in. Couple turns, then put your bolt in, very simple, slide it all the way forward, click it down, there you go. You've done maintenance on the gun. Probably one of the biggest pluses I can see for this gun is how easy it is to maintain. If you had to do anything with your valve, which you hardly ever do, but it all comes out together. One simple package, very easy, very clean. When I had all that stuff out, all that remained in this tube was the LPR. The LPR is also very serviceable. I don't know if I mentioned it with the regulators here. They're very consistent. I haven't had any issues with that. The only thing that you might have to do is play around a little bit with the pressure here and your dwell to make sure you can reach a high enough FPS with your HPR. The high pressure regulator on this gun tends to sweet spot a little bit earlier than you might think. So when I was playing in a colder sorry guys, the battery just died there. Anyways, so if I'm playing when I was playing in a colder environment, I found that I couldn't get the HPR high enough up to where it would be actually up at the 300 feet per second or around there that I wanted. It was stuck at around 270. If you have that issue, I'd recommend looking into upping your dwell before the LPR. Upping the LPR will pretty much toss out how nice it is on paint and how efficient it is. So try to keep your LPR in a pretty low, or hopefully at the flush, and then try to up your dwell if you have to, if you can't get this the HPR to a point where it'll adjust. The only issue I've seen there, but it's very, very efficient, it's very consistent with the regulators. I love that about this gun. It's great. Next thing I'm going to talk about here is the feed neck. A fantastic feed neck. You shouldn't expect any less from a high-end gun. You'll see, of course, the thumb screw here, so you don't even need a tool at all to adjust it. open and close, of course. You can whip off your hopper in a couple seconds and put on a different one, different size. Doesn't take any time. The only problem I see with this feed neck is this right here. If you see inside of the feed neck, if you watch the Tech PB Supergun show, you would have noticed this. He talked about it. There's a hole here right underneath where your loader sits on the feed neck, and what can happen is dirt and dust and stuff can actually get inside of your breech underneath your feed neck and get into the gun. So that's kind of a weird setup, especially seeing as they tried to keep everything nice and clean with the bolts all enclosed. I'm not sure why they ended up going with something like that. It's kind of disappointing, I guess, but so far I haven't had any issues with it. I don't really play in a dirty climate for the most part, especially since I play mostly indoors, but the tournaments that I've played in, I haven't seen any issues with it, but you never know. If you're playing in like sand or something, you know, maybe make sure you're not throwing your gun in the dirt. The last thing I wanted to mention is the ergonomics of this gun, and personally, I find them absolutely fantastic. I'm a bit of a taller guy. I'm about 6'1" or so, and personally, I'm not a fan of the really small setups and guns. Like, say this was a mini or something, my hand would be almost right here, that close to my other hand if I was holding that gun, and that's not the way I personally like to have my gun set up. I'm more of a sort of longer setup, and you know, it feels like a little bit more of a comfortable setup to me when I have my ASA nice and close to the end, and I have a pretty big tank. I have a 68-45, and lots of room here between both of my hands. There's room for me to wrap my fingers around here if I wanted to. The layout, having it so far apart, is personally a huge plus for me. If you're a little guy, maybe it won't be quite as nice for you, but I think it's an amazing way to go. I prefer it to a lot of the newer guns where they're going with a much shorter setup. Who knows, maybe that'll change in the future where other guns want it to be bigger. But to me, the way that feels in my hands is perfect. The way this gun shoots is going to be pretty similar to an Ego. It is a little bit smoother. Personally, I find it a little bit smoother, a little bit quieter than an Ego, but it still has that snappy feeling to it. I've always been a spool valve kind of guy, and if you've seen any of my videos, you'd know that. And you'll see, with a gun like this, it feels a lot more snappy than a spool valve. Even though technically, I'm sure you can't really notice it, the quicker dwell time on a gun like this definitely feels like a faster shot than a spool valve. With that spool valve feel where it's kind of more like a whoosh every time you shoot, it definitely feels smoother and a little bit slower than a gun like this, where every time you pop out and all you hear is that little kind of crack sound every time you shoot. Personally, I'm kind of neither here nor there on the poppet valve guns. I'm still a spool valve fan, but I can see why people are a fan of this style of gun. It definitely is a little bit smoother and quieter than an Ego, and personally I prefer it to an Ego for a lot of the reasons that I've already said, especially the ergonomics. It's a great gun, and man, I have had the only issues that I have really found with this gun were when I was having problems with the regulator. I upped the LPR too high and ended up breaking a lot of paint with it. If you keep your LPR in a low place and maybe up your dwell a bit instead, you still might suffer a little bit in efficiency, but it will shoot brittle paint. It'll shoot great, and no matter what paint you're shooting, no matter how fast you shoot it, this gun will definitely work for you. Super lightweight, a super thin profile gun. There's really nothing bad to say about it. I gotta say, I'm just really disappointed that the value of these guns have plummeted so far, because personally I would take this gun over any 08 Ego, which was the current Ego at the time this one was released. Or actually, I guess the 09 Ego would have been the same year as this. This was released in 08. So whenever the 09 Ego was released, this I would probably prefer to it. The DM9 was released the same time. I don't know if I'd prefer this to the DM9. That's kind of my personal preference, though. So there you go. That's my review of the Cyborg. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully it helped. It's a great gun. If you can pick one up for the new price that people seem to be putting them up for, I'd say pick it up. It's a great gun. It'll definitely serve you well.